Should be interesting. The most convincing time traveler. And the name of the channel is Motec.
Of April 2006, a man stood on the street in Kyiv, which is the capital of Ukraine. He was wearing an old Soviet military uniform with an old camera in his hand, behaving strangely. For starters, the outfit he was wearing was no longer accepted. And if you know a thing or two about Ukraine and Russia, you would know, even before the war started, there had always been heated tension between both countries. This is like a German wearing a swastika uniform and visiting Israel. That's a mob mentality riot waiting to happen. People were already giving the stares and uncomfortable looks, which in turn made this man uncomfortable, and he continued acting strangely. Luckily, the police were close by and saw this man. They met him and started asking him questions. The strange man said he didn't know where he was. He was lost. The police asked if he had any means of identification, at least to help him. The man brought out his ID and gave it to them. The police looked at each other after seeing his ID. They were confused. The first thing they noticed when he gave it to them was that it was from a country that no longer existed, the Soviet Union. Ukraine used to be a part of the Soviet Union, but everyone went their separate way when the Soviet Union broke up. And while that ID was valid, it was no longer produced. If it was an old man in his 70s, we could say maybe he was reminiscing the good old days. But this was someone in his 20s, definitely. He shouldn't have this ID. His ID showed that he was born in 1932. His picture matched the one on the ID, and the ID had all the right government seal on it. The name on the ID was Sergei Ponomarenko, and he was born in Kyiv. The police were clueless. According to his ID, this man should be 74 years old, but all they saw was a 20 to 30-year-old man standing in front of them.
Wow.
One of them casually asked Sergei what day he thought it was, and Sergei replied, April 23rd, 1958.
Oh, shit.
Now, the police concluded that whoever this man was needed help. Mental help, to be precise. Sergei told them that he wasn't crazy, but the more he kept talking, especially about the Soviet Union, the more the police were looking at him like a cuckoo bird. The police finally made it clear to Sergei. Jail or a psychiatric house. His choice. Sergei picked the latter, and they took him to a mental hospital. They got to a mental hospital and put him in touch with a psychologist, Dr. Paul Krudikov. After the debriefing with the police, Paul took Sergei to his office. After entering the office, Sergei became intrigued. He was very interested in everything around him, as if he had never seen it before. When questioned by the doctor, he told the doctor that his birthday was June 16th, 1932, and that he was only 25 years old with a love for photography, which was why he had the camera with him. The doctor decided to play along with Sergei's story, so he asked him how he got to the future.
How'd you get here?
It was daytime, and I wanted to go for a walk in the city. I took my camera, but when I left my house, I saw a strange object that had a bell shape, and it was very strange, and it was flying in a strange way. It is difficult to explain what I was seeing. It might be better to look at the photos from my camera. Seeing something that words can't describe, his natural reaction, as with everybody who owns a camera, was to take a picture of it. Right after taking the picture, he found himself on the streets of Kyiv City, but not the one he recognized. He didn't move an inch or anything, just removed his hands from the camera, and he found himself here. Dr. Paul took Sergei's camera and looked through it, as well as the images. He saw right away that the camera was an old, rare Yashimaflex. He also deduced that the camera used a film type that hadn't been made since the 1970s, but his expertise had a limit, so he called in a professional photographer named Vadim Poizner for assistance. When Vadim got to the scene, he was shocked to see Sergei's camera. Following Vadim's explanation, Sergei used the first 120 dual-lens reflex camera made by Yasika in 1953. He also noticed, when he was pulling out the film from the camera, that the reel was made in 1956 and was weirdly still in great condition. At first, Vadim thought Sergei was just an enthusiastic collector, because some photographers like to keep old equipment, but Sergei's camera is the most unique mix of old and new. Another thing is that the film that came with this camera is no longer being made, but Sergei's camera had the film and was in good condition too. Everyone was even more confused after hearing Vadim's analysis. Dr. Paul asked Vadim to wash some of the pictures to see if the UFO Sergei talked about was still there. This image wasn't that easy to make, because don't forget, the picture was taken in 1956, so technically the image was made in the last 100 years. After Vadim worked hard to develop it, he saw the bell-shaped UFO in the picture, just as Sergei said. When the doctor asked him about the UFO in the photo, Sergei said, "Now you are convinced that I'm telling the truth. I so far do not understand what this object is and how something like that happened to me at the same moment when I took the picture, and I went down to look at the camera, and somehow I showed up in this year." Some of the pictures Vadim washed showed the way the streets of Kyiv looked in the 1950s, and a photo of Sergei himself.
Why should people join us on June?
And a photo of Sergei himself standing outside a building in 1956.
Bizarre.
One of the pictures also showed a woman with Sergei, but at this point in time, the exact connection between them was still unknown.
He looks sweet.
After Vadim finished developing the photos, he went back to study the film again. He was so intrigued by the whole thing. Vadim said that ordinary film can only be stored for 20 to 30 years, and it needs to be frozen and sealed. But this film of Sergei is really strange. It didn't go through all that process of preservation, and yet the washed photos are so clear. The more Vadim thought about it, the more incredible he felt, and he had so many questions he wanted to ask Sergei. They still had some photos they wanted to wash, and since it took time to wash the photos, they decided to keep Sergei in a separate room, with someone keeping watch outside the room to prevent him from escaping. Cameras were also installed in the facility for additional security. Later that day, after fully washing all the pictures, they needed Sergei to answer some questions. But when they went to his room to look for him, he was not there. He just simply disappeared. The police looked into the cameras for clues. It showed that indeed Sergei entered the room, but it never showed Sergei leaving. At first, everyone thought Sergei had somehow sneaked out and escaped. So they looked at all the nearby camera footage, and to their shock, they didn't see one image of Sergei anywhere. He really did disappear. The psychiatrist Paul then suggested that they look at the pictures to see if it holds clues to finding Sergei, which makes sense. They searched all the pictures, trying to find any that could provide clues. It was almost a dead end until they saw a picture of Sergei with a woman. In the picture, they were both close, and because of that, they thought that Sergei was probably in a relationship with this woman. Paul asked the local police for help to investigate the matter. The police first investigated the household registration files. During the search, the police found a file named Sergei. However, the files show that this person mysteriously disappeared in 1960. The police also found out that the woman in the picture ended up being Sergei's wife. Her name is Valentina Kurik, and when they found her, she was already 74 years old. The police immediately went to question her, and during the conversation between the police and Valentina, she brought out a picture album and showed a picture she took with Sergei in 1958. It was the same picture that was found in Sergei's camera when he first arrived in 2006. Valentina was shocked when Dr. Kutrikov showed her the same picture and asked where he got it, and the doctor told her all that happened. Valentina told the doctor all what Sergei said was true. She told the police that Sergei went missing for a few days in April 1958, and she could not find him. She was about to report to the police when Sergei came back out of nowhere. While she was happy that her lost husband was found, she noticed that Sergei was acting very strange after he got back. He was very nervous. When asked what happened to him when he was missing, he wouldn't reply. He also warned Valentina not to mention what happened in the past few days. It was like this for 2 years until 1960. In 1960, Sergei finally told her what happened. He told her when he was missing, he was actually trapped in the year 2006. And here is the crazy thing. After he told her about what happened, he disappeared again. This time, he didn't return. Valentina never saw Sergei again after that, but she got a letter from him.
What?
There was a picture of a man in the letter. One of the policemen pulled this picture out while she talked. The man in the picture has a beard and looks to be in his 40s. It can't possibly be Sergei. But Valentina was adamant that this was Sergei. The proof was his eyes. His eyes didn't change. After some investigation, they found out that the picture was taken in a park by a river in Kyiv, behind the Dnieper, which is Ukraine's main river. On the other side of the river are tall buildings that don't look much like the ones that are being built now. The location is the same, but the building is not there. The only conclusion about this picture is that it was taken in the future. There was a sentence written on the back, "I am good at everything, and I will try to come back." This picture made things even more confusing. This would mean that Sergei is not only in the future, but he has a means of communicating with people in the past effectively. He is basically a time traveler. How is this achieved? Is time travel real? All kinds of questions we have concerning this case have not been answered. And since Ukrainian officials have not come forward to refute the rumors, we are left with more theories and questions. Now, despite what you might think about time travel, it does exist, and it's very possible to travel in time. In 1905, Einstein published his special theory of relativity. Einstein described how moving. Clocks tick more slowly than stationary ones. The faster you move, the slower time moves. So, if you want to go 100 years into the future, you take a spaceship that can go 99.9995% the speed of light, fly 50 light years away, turn around, and come back to Earth. It would have been 100 years, but because you were going so fast, it only took you a year. This idea has been shown to be true in real life. If you put a very accurate clock on an airplane and fly it in the same way that the Earth spins, that clock will be slightly behind the clocks on Earth when you land. That's special relativity at work. Every astronaut in space operates on a time that is 0.02 seconds into the future than the rest of the time here on Earth. Einstein also proposed the theory of general relativity in 1915, which says that gravity is a geometric feature of spacetime, also called four-dimensionality. It comes down to this: time moves more slowly when gravity is strong. This is known as gravitational time dilation. Remember that scene in Interstellar where Matthew McConaughey and the rest of the team land on a planet close to the black hole? The gravity there was so strong that every hour they were there, 7 years had gone by on Earth. Even the movie Inception explored this notion, showing how time passes differently depending on which layer of the dream the characters enter into. With each subsequent layer of dreams, time slows down exponentially.
It's a week, the first level down. 6 months, the second level down, and the third level.
It's 10 years.
I know these are movie examples, and some of you will be like, well, that's movies, but guess what? It happens. Heck, it's happening right now, as you watch this video. You see, GPS satellites are about 12,000 miles above the Earth's surface, where there is less gravity. Because of this, time moves faster on the satellites than it does on Earth. The satellites have to be constantly changed to match the slower moving time on Earth for GPS to work. If not, you would probably get a GPS route that will drive you off a cliff. The thing about traveling in time, be it to the future or to the past, is that to perform such a feat, you would need a huge amount of energy. Think of the energy of a black hole or an exploding star. That huge. Currently, our civilization can't do this, but maybe, just maybe, a very advanced civilization could. Like the UFO Sergei saw. Even the psychiatrist Dr. Kutrikov thought the object in the sky was a UFO. After hearing Sergei's story and seeing the picture of the bell-shaped object hanging over Kyiv. He thought that aliens could have abducted Sergei, knowingly or unknowingly. The doctor also based this theory on Einstein's theory of relativity. Dr. Kutrikov wondered if Sergei had been abducted by aliens, sent to another galaxy at the speed of light, and then brought him back at the wrong time. And what could have felt like seconds to Sergei was, in fact, decades. This could be what happened to Sergei when he took a picture of the UFO. Did he somehow enter a wormhole or a tear in the fabric of space-time by just capturing the ship? The ship would definitely have the required energy to do that. But how and why was it just him? Was Sergei just a collateral damage that happened as the ship passed by? If he was, I could understand. But how did he go back to his time from 2006 without the help of the spaceship? And how did he travel again to the future and somehow find a way to communicate with his wife? The more I try to understand this story, the more questions I have. And that's probably because everything I said concerning this story didn't happen. Everything I just told you is nothing more but a great story, and all from one TV show. It was all on a show called Aliens that aired in 2012 on a Ukrainian station called 1+1.
With a Coursera Plus subscription, you can become an AI guru, data scientist.
Called Aliens that aired in 2012 on a Ukrainian station called 1+1. There were a total of 10 episodes, and this story takes place in the third episode, which is called Time Traveler. Other titles include Alien Abductions, Levitation Effect, Phantoms, and Crop Circles. The show was mostly about stories of strange and supernatural things that happened, and the crazy thing is that every episode starts with a disclaimer stating, the Aliens series aims to restore scenes of controversial topics. Any theory and hypothesis proposed cannot be considered to be correct, and further scientific research is required. All scene restorations are based on the statements of witnesses. There is no conclusive evidence to prove the existence of aliens. Your opinion on this issue is up to you. In other words, the show itself says, any theory put forward cannot be taken as true. It also makes the point that these are scene restorations, which means that all of those pictures and videos of Sergei that you see on several websites about this story are actually recreations. Also, the picture of Sergei standing by the river in the park is fake. Once you zoom in and take a proper look at the picture, you can see that the tall buildings in the background were added with Photoshop. Some buildings are basically long-looking, and one can easily use Photoshop to scale them up and down. At first glance, it seems to be a high-rise building. Only a closer look will reveal the clumsy Photoshop trace. In such, we believe the building used in the image is the Empire State Building in New York. Next, the ID that looked original wasn't. It was fake. You can clearly see the differences in the ID. Sergei said in the video that he was born on June 17th, 1932, but the date of birth on his Communist Youth League membership card shows that he was born in March 1932, which is different from what he said. Unless you are suffering from dementia, I don't see how you can easily forget your birth month. There are also a few pretty glaring details that are wrong in this episode. For example, the security camera footage displays the time as Tuesday, April 23rd, 2006. But if you check the calendar, you will see that April 23rd, 2006 was a Sunday. Every event about this story was made up, and the people in it are nothing more than actors. And as it spread across the country, many marketing accounts added to the story to make it more mysterious, which aroused everyone's attention and curiosity. According to search results on YouTube and other video sites, this video with the title Alien 3 has over 3.36 million views, and still counting. The video itself is just a deduction of rumors, and the entire video's content is full of loopholes that violate facts and lack persuasiveness.
New app users with qualifying orders. What's Boba? Who knows?
He's here.
Showtime.
So, I hear some of you are concerned about the fact that I'm taking over the company from my great uncle.
Yeah, I actually heard a few I'm terrifieds, like from Dave.
Marcy, that was in confidence.
Well, rest assured, Dave, the company's in great hands. Hit the vid, Marcy.
Now?
Yeah, now. We're bringing together the nation's agents in a super comprehensive agent.